be so long ago now, when skies were turning gray. Let's not forget how together we blew away the clouds to let the sun shine through.
In 1944, the government received an encouraging report from its advisers. This showed that since the outbreak of war, consumption of milk and vegetables had risen by 30%. In contrast, the intake of meat and sugar had dropped by the same amount. The government's food policy had been designed to cope with the blockade of imports, but ironically, its long-term effect was to improve the nation's diet.
BBC Home Service. Up in the morning early. This time, it's physical exercises for ladies.
Good morning, everyone. Push your chair out of the way and stand with your feet a little way apart. Swing both arms straight forwards to shoulder level and put them shoulder width apart. Now let them drop down to your side.
The latest ideas on health and nutrition influenced official policies, but luck played its part. By good fortune, what was bad for people was difficult to get, and what was good for them was in plentiful supply.
Now swing forwards and sideways and circle them up. Forwards and sideways and up. Swing forwards and sideways and up and round.
Morning.
Forwards, up and up. Swing forwards and sideways.
Ruth Mott prepares a breakfast cereal that is more commonly known today by its Swiss name, muesli.
Up high.
To rolled oats that have been soaked overnight, Ruth adds grated raw carrot, chopped apple and dried fruit.
Front to the side, across to the side, and across to the side, and swing up, across, and up, across, and stop. Well, let's try that again with the right leg.
Make the
and
tea,
both
Joyce.
legs quite straight.
Yes, all right then.
Go, swing across.
We're about to try this Swiss breakfast this morning. I don't know what the Swiss will think of it, but we'll give it our okay in a minute.
Well, after all that exercising, I'm going to need it. I'm starving.
Well, I've given you more than I have to. You're a growing girl. I've finished growing, I think, now.
Well, I'm younger than you.
No, don't be cheeky.
There were several indicators that the nation's health had improved.
Yes,
Among them was the significant fall in infant mortality.
Tomtits must have said.
Under the National Milk Scheme, all expectant mothers and young children were entitled to a pint of milk a day at reduced cost, free if their income was below a certain level.
quite a bit of apple in here then.
Well, the apples are quite nice and they want finishing up, so keep your feet on the ground.
I don't need that.
Well, you will when you've got through that pile of washing.
What washing's that?
Oh, I found you some as I've been round the kitchen.
Oh, I thought I'd done it all.
No. Washing's like spinach, it's never finished.
It's true in this house, isn't it?
Mm.
Throughout May 1944, an increase in military activity alerted villages in southern England that something was imminent.
It gave you a very funny feeling, really, because you wondered what was really going to come out of it all. You had no idea. And all round here we were planes and gliders going over, so that you knew that something was happening even before it was announced.
You knew troops were in the area and yet you couldn't see them. It was an uneary sort of a silence. That was sort of the giveaway, and we knew that something different had suddenly come over the area, and we expected, you know, any day to hear that they were gone.
The BBC Home Service. Here is a special bulletin read by John Snag. D-Day has come. Early this morning, the Allies began the assault on the northwestern face of Hitler's European fortress. The first official news came just after 9:30, when Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Expeditionary Force
We've landed in France.
issued communique number 1. This said, under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces, supported by strong air forces, began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France. It was announced a little later that General Montgomery is in command of the army group carrying out the assault. This army group includes British, Canadian, and United States forces.
We were pleased that when it did come, that the boys got away and got such a good foothold so early on. And we used to talk about it in the potting shed every morning before we started, and one and another would bring different snippets of news and that sort of thing.
Well, you hoped the end was coming, A, because you wanted to see everyone back, and the other thing was you were so sick of rations that you thought if the war ended that would be the end of rationing, but it didn't happen quite like that.
Mounting the largest seaborne invasion in history consumed all the raw materials the country could produce. At Chiltern Gardens, Harry Dodson burns wood off the estate. It supplements the meagre coal allocation for the glass houses.
Another load of milk, Mr. Dobson?
All right, let them come down. Wood for burning in the stokeholes on these estate gardens was very important. It enabled one to keep a much better temperature than one's allocation of coke or whatever you were burning. The method was to go to the fire a couple or 3 times in the evening according to the outside temperature, and then when you went the last time, you threw on a few shovelfuls of the coke. And usually by the morning, the wood was all gone, but there was a red glow in the boiler from the coke. It was quite satisfactory. It was very good.
A byproduct of burnt wood is potash. It's essential for plant growth, but was in very short supply. It was only given to crops like tomatoes that needed it most. Before the war, most potash had come from Northern Europe. With that source cut off, every effort was made to encourage gardeners to produce their own. The government even issued a blueprint for building the right kind of bonfire.
It's quite interesting, this, Ellie. It's pretty complicated, but it's worth having a go. I think we'll see what we can do with it anyhow. We've got the material here. Well, first of all, we've got to put this old drain pipe in. Now, don't question me, because the leaflet doesn't say that it has to be anything like this. But the leaflet also doesn't say, hey, we're going to make a tunnel to let this draft through. So I'm boxing clever and I'm going to put this drain pipe on the bottom. Go up to the pipe. Yeah, go up to the pipe with it. And we want a nice heap of this. It is with this tinder material that we're going to make the size of our bonfire to be. So we've got to pat this around and get a nice circle and reasonably firm so that it will hold the follow-on material, which is in that heap there. We're not very round here, are we? That's better. No. I want it round, not a flat side. We want the dry material here. Now watch it, there may be some wild material in here. We don't want to get caught on this. That's right, then keep it round. Build it up rather than pat it very well. That's right. Now we want the raspberry prunings, the brushy prunings. This is what's got to ignite the bigger wood. Try and keep it even so that it keeps the conical shape. This is what we want. We want more your side, don't we? We've got a good 6 inches or more of this material around. And now we can put all that damp rubbish on, all the obnoxious weeds that you found on that back of the border. There's lily and docks and bits of thistle. This is absolutely ideal. And those old nettles, they can go on. Having done this, we've had the easy bit. Now we've got to start work. If you can get a good wad around the bottom like that, you've got a good base then to put the other soil on.
The earth covering kept the fire smouldering and prevented any glow escaping at night. That would have contravened the blackout.
If you pass me the lucifers, I'll set light to it and we'll see what happens.
The bonfire looked impressive, but it's doubtful whether it produced any more potash than the conventional one.
Well, that's caught more draft than what I expected it to.
It's good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Look at all the smoke coming up from the
Yes,
top.
I thought it would. It needed a little more clingy soil than what we got today. It's remarkable how much this soil has dried out in the last few days.
The instructions were elaborate, but not as clear as they might have been. The bonfire was probably designed as much to kill weeds as to produce potash. And, as Harry confessed, the result was not quite what he expected.
I think our fault lay in too much really burnable material. It just caught alight, and I totally underestimated the amount of draft that we were going to get in the enclosed area of Kennet Terrace. I don't somehow think that the spectacular part of the business was supposed to have really come into it. And I think what we burnt in half a day, I think should have lasted at least a day and the night. And you'd got two pretty good elements there together. You'd got some sterilised soil and you'd got the potash underneath it.
Never a strong point of the British cuisine, salads were now recommended all the year round. Chopped raw cabbage and celery gave vim and vigour and helped build resistance to infection. The government appealed to vanity. You can look right if you feel right, if you feed right. An ounce of lettuce is worth an inch of lipstick.
This is a nice lettuce, isn't it?
Well, that's lovely, isn't it? I tell you what, take the outside leaves off and put them in the bowl for the chicken.
The lettuce is fresh, but real mayonnaise to accompany it remains a dream.
Put them in the salad dryer. This is a substitute mayonnaise from the one that you make with egg yolks. It's done with a steamed boiled potato, a medium-sized one, what, about 2 to 3 ounces, and steam it, then skin it and push it through a fine wire sieve. Add a little bit of mustard, salt, pepper, and mix that in. Then mix in a tablespoonful and a half of vinegar. And then gradually add oil to make it to the consistency that you want, about 2 tablespoons of oil to start off with, and then just mix that in carefully. If you try and get it in too fast or beat it too much, then the oil comes back out again. So it's basically more of a stirring action than a beating action. And then you just have that with your salad. George, when you've got that lettuce cleaned up nicely, will you scrape us about 4 large carrots? I should think. If you like to take that in and lay the table,
Right.
I'll finish this off here.
That looks nice.
Make a change. Gonna have some bread?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Try the mayonnaise.
Yes, mayonnaise without egg.
Looks a bit different, doesn't it?
Here you are.
BBC Home Service. Here is the news, read by Richard Weston.
Tea?
Yes, please.
Paris has been liberated. A communique just received from General Koenig announces that it has been liberated by French forces of the interior.
Range control!
As the Allies battled their way across northern France, at home a new and unexpected danger threatened. The V-1s were pilotless flying bombs. Aimed at London, they often fell short or were shot down in a hail of shrapnel.
Well, the most distinctive thing about them, of course, was the noise they made and the fire that was coming out the rear side of them. we stood there watching them, and hopefully that they were going to carry on. And suddenly the fire went out and all the noise stopped, and it took a nosedive.
Then, in the autumn of 1944, came bad news from the continent. The airborne landings in Holland failed to dislodge the Germans. Once again, people had hoped the war would be over by Christmas. It was not.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light.
Being as it's a Christmas cake, I'm going to push the boat out and have 6 ounces. I think we all tried to help each other if we could. You started collecting your stuff for Christmas back sort of September time, you know, collecting a little bit of fruit with your odd coupons and putting it by. And then I'm going to weigh out 12 ounces of self-raising flour.
Next year our troubles will be miles away.
That looks a very nice cake, Mrs. Mott.
It'll last us a bit with the feel of it.
When we look back now, 2 years gone by, to a dark and stormy sky, do you remember how we survived? Come rain or shine, it turned out fine. Though the memories are fading of those days so long ago now, when skies were turning gray, let's not forget how together we blew away the clouds to let the sun